There's a lot to get to. Let's get to it first. We're going to start with Chrystia Freeland being asked a question, and then, well, William Diaz says, Chrystia Freeland's press secretary attempts to block a journalist from asking a follow-up question to the deputy prime minister. She eventually caves in. But it does take her a very long time to cave in. Much too long, if you ask me. Watch this back and forth. It's quick, but it's interesting.
Good afternoon, Marina von Stackelberg from CBC News. Will there be any further exemptions to the carbon tax on home heating?
No.
Straight no, no future of that. Okay. My follow-up question, I wanted to follow up on what my...
Sorry, one question, one follow-up.
That's just a clarity.
It's one question, one follow-up. It's one question, one follow-up, I'm sorry.
I'm hoping that I can ask my second question because I just wanted the clarity on that.
I'm so sorry, it's one question, one follow-up.
It's okay. Kat, it's okay. It's okay.
Thank
It's
you.
fine.
Thank you. My follow-up question is, we are...
The video cuts out. What? Let's pretend this is the follow-up question. After all that, we don't get to hear the follow-up question. The other part was I thought Chrystia Freeland's facial expressions during this whole build-up, before she says anything, they're funny as all get out. But what the heck is she doing with her face? Anyway, here's another question. But before I get to that, first, yes, there was no chance in a snowball's chance in heck that Chrystia Freeland was going to listen to the finance ministers. I knew that yesterday. I told you that yesterday. I'm pretty sure I said she's not going to listen to these people, and they're not going to repeal this carbon tax on home heating, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not surprised by this whatsoever. Okay. Here's the follow-up question. It's about Scott Moe and about jail time. And Kian frames this like Chrystia Freeland won't rule out jailing Saskatchewan's Premier Scott Moe for disobeying the carbon tax law. She doesn't really say that. She doesn't speak to that. The reporter speaks to that, and Chrystia Freeland answers as if that's part of a suite of things that you can do to people who break the law, right? Here's Chrystia Freeland.
We've submitted a question towards your communications department that has not been fully answered for 2 days, specifically about penalties when it comes to not paying the carbon tax on home heating. Is there, even though that threat exists from Premier Scott Moe, that he will stop collecting those carbon fees, what can the federal government do to prevent that from him acting unilaterally? Will the province, will anyone incur penalties? Will there be fees or perhaps even jail time?
The federal government expects everyone in Canada to obey the law. Canada is the country of peace, order, and good government. I think that's something all Canadians believe in. It's something we expect.
Right, but there's a whole lot of questions. See, the thing is, Scott Moe would be in trouble if he withheld the tax, and it would trigger action from the government. The action would be legal action, and it would go through a court, right? Which is fine because things have changed since what the government argued they're going to do. Danielle Smith's going to explain it right now. What they argued they're going to do with the carbon tax is not in practice what they're doing. So Scott Moe would have a legal standpoint. I don't think they could unilaterally jail a premier. They could say, you're acting against the law of the land, and Scott Moe would say, no, I'm not, and we'll take it to the court. And then the court will decide, and so on and so forth. Here's Danielle Smith talking about how what the government argued about their carbon tax and what the reality of the implementation is are different. Here she is.
I think what the federal government has done here is that they have blown up the architecture and the entire rationale for the carbon tax. Home heating oil has a higher emissions profile than natural gas and propane. So if anything, that would be the one that you wouldn't take the carbon tax off. But to punish others who also are facing an affordability crisis, especially as we're going into the winter season, it's just not fair. People see that it's not fair. And I'm of the view that it's not constitutional. That the federal government made the argument in the court that they needed to have a floor price, so every Canadian, regardless of where they were, would have to pay the same taxes. And that's not how they've implemented it. They've been playing favorites, they've been playing politics, and I think that undermines their argument about why this should be a federal decision. If they're going to now shift and say, yeah, but there's regional differences that have to be accounted for, well, that's my position. That's exactly why these things should be left to the provinces. So we're consulting lawyers to see whether or not there's an opportunity for us to re-challenge challenge that reference case with this new information and the way in which the federal government, I think, has inappropriately used that power. And we'll see if it accelerates or escalates from.
So that's interesting, right? I think that that's an interesting turn of events because the government needed to turn the page on a whole bunch of different scandals, blowing up their carbon tax. Didn't have that in the bingo card for 2023. Danielle Smith again says, these regulations are irresponsible and reckless, setting unrealistic targets and even banking on technologies that don't exist. They will result in Albertans shouldering an unbearable cost for an electricity system that will no longer divide or deliver the safe, reliable, and affordability upon which our lives depend. We will not permit these dangerous and unconstitutional regulations to be imposed upon our province. And so she's talking about the clean fuel standards and the regulations that would put people in jail for running electricity, natural gas electricity plants, or natural gas plants, period, in order to keep people warm in a minus 30 situation where the grid is at risk. So they don't want that. They're not interested in any of that, and yet, that's what we're doing. So yesterday I was talking about how I was pretty sure the ArriveCan app scam, that's hard to say, and the SDTC scam are different. And so ArriveCan has $54 million under investigation. ArriveCan, $54 million. That's $54 million app. That's one scandal by itself. That's GC Capital, GC Companies, GC, I can't remember the name of them, but he's the guy talking in this clip I'm about to show you. That's ArriveCan. And then there's a separate thing where the board of the SDTC, and they were distributing money as well, and 40 million of that is under investigation, but there's a lot more money that they distributed as well over and atop that. But it's a similar kind of scam, except the SDTC is supposed to be kind of more closely related, more closely tied to the government, rather than the contracting situation in the ArriveCan app scam. So they're two separate scandals, but they're very, very similar, and it seems like they should be all under one umbrella. But I don't think that they are. These are just two big scandals that are happening kind of simultaneously and have similar traits. So it's interesting, right, to me. Here's Larry Brock, the SDTC leaked recordings with Bolter. I think I'm getting that wrong. Are referencing the guy who's being interviewed here for the ArriveCan app. So, but I still think the $40 million that's under investigation and the $54 million ArriveCan thing are still separate incidents. But man, like I really could be wrong. But still, this is the witness from GC Companies, GC Investments. I can't remember the name of it. And I apologize for that. I'll get it after this clip. But he is not telling the truth to the committees. Larry Brock is an experienced prosecutor, and he's not happy about it, and he's being very explicit about that. And in the next one, Michael, can't remember his name, Barrett, Michael Barrett is asking him the same basic questions and telling him, listen, man, you've lied to this committee a bunch of times. We have no reason to believe that anything you're saying is true, and you don't know the basic information. So there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on with regards to these scandals all blowing up, and these guys are doing a great job at really trying to zero in on what's going on, but they're being hamstrung by the witness not wanting to cooperate, as well as it being a muddy scandal because people are saying, well, I don't remember that. I don't remember this. I don't remember that. The invoices are, who could remember that? I'm not prepared for that question, so on and so forth. These are like 5-minute long videos. Here we go.
Mr. Firth, I'm sure that the millions of Canadians who either are watching this or will learn about this in the press or seek out the transcript of this particular meeting will be very, very grateful that the RCMP has access to this particular evidence. What I can understand is why you would take active steps in misleading this particular committee and Canadians with respect to your role as it relates to fraud and forgery with respect to modifying without permission and consent these transcripts, but the resumes to the government. What I can't understand is why you would deliberately lie to this committee on a very innocent question that was put to you by my colleague, Mr. Barrett, when he asked you if you knew whether or not Mr. Cameron McDonald from the CBSA had a cottage. And you said no.
Do you know
10 minutes earlier.
if Cameron McDonald has a cottage?
I don't know if Cameron McDonald has a cottage.
Do you know if he had one?
I do not know if he had a cottage.
Do you want to reflect on that answer?
Yeah, Mr. McDonald has never referred to it as a cottage. It's a chalet. It's not a cottage.
For that clarification, Mr. Firth. Are you kidding me?
That is the honest.
Are you saying you knew all along that he had something that was equivalent to a cottage or a cabin, but because a different word was used to refer to it, that you had the license to say, I don't know?
You were asking
Is that what you want us to believe?
You were asking a specific question about a cottage. I answered honestly. He has never mentioned that he had a cottage.
This guy hasn't said anything honest since he's been here.
But he's got a cabin, doesn't he?
A chalet.
A chalet. Well, why didn't you offer that?
Because that was not the question that was asked.
I see. I see. So you have a very limited ability in terms of telling this committee the truth. Is that correct, Mr. Firth?
No, I'm answering
Because the
questions
RCMP is
correctly.
going to have a field day when they come to interview you.
That's right.
So that's one aspect of what's going on. And then here's Barrett again. This is another 5-minute long interview, or 5-minute long kind of back and forth talking about ArriveCan and how much money they did for not doing any coding, how much money they got from it, invoices and things like that, where this guy can't remember anything. And here we go.
The things that you've said, but you are required to be honest when you come before a parliamentary committee. And this clever act that you're trying to put on is not fooling anyone. So I'm going to ask you some of these questions again. Have you ever met with government officials or anyone employed by government in a private residence? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, what is the nature of that meeting?
I'm assuming that I don't know the exact meaning you're referencing. It's not like I've had hundreds of these things. The truth is, I don't know which one you're talking about.
I want to know about all. I want to know about all of them.
I don't know which one you're. Sorry, I cannot comment. If you could direct your exact question to me in writing, I'm more than happy to respond.
Sir, you're here providing oral answers to oral questions for a standing committee of the House of Commons.
I don't have the answer.
Well, your answer changes.
I do not have the answer.
So your answer changes. I've got about a minute left in time, and I'm interested. I'm interested in what precision we can get on any of that. You've had so many meetings with government officials in their private residences outside of working hours that you can't even remember. You can't remember how much money you were paid to work on the ArriveCan app. You can't remember meetings that you had in hotels with the chief officials for information technology for the government of Canada. I'm not sure what confidence your clients could have in you if you can't remember these very basic details. Sir, I'm going to ask that you table for this parliamentary committee all bank records related to your business and the government of Canada, that GC Strategies, government of Canada, and Bottler. Anywhere that nexus exists, this committee, I would like you to table the bank records. Are you willing to do that?
Nope.
Yes or no, sir?
Yes. So it's between the government to myself to Bottler. Is that what you're asking?
Everything concerning everything.
I'm asking clarification on your question. Please.
Everything concerning GC Strategies, the government of Canada, Coridex, Dalian, Bottler. So anywhere there's an intersection of any of those companies, the committee would like your bank records. You will furnish us with them within 48 hours?
Oh, I'm not prepared to do that. I'm sorry. Okay. For what purpose,
Mr. Chair,
Can you please understand?
Mr. Chair,
these are private information.
Mr. Chair, I move that the committee order the production of those documents.
So there you go. It may be closer to a Venn diagram. The ArriveCan app scam, the SDTC thing are different. The SDTC focuses on the board itself and the distribution of money in improper ways. And the whistleblowers from Bottler, who recorded the ArriveCan guy who's just talking now, saying that he had all this access and he had all of this ability to influence, and it was basically a what was the sponsorship scandal style giveaway. It was a huge amount of money, and if you weren't taking advantage, you were basically an idiot, blah, 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 blah. So on one side, you've got a board of directors who is acting inappropriately and handing out a lot of money, and there are whistleblowers who are saying these people at SDTC are acting inappropriately. That's one scandal. And the ArriveCan scam app, app is another scandal. They're very closely related though, and there may be overlapping players, but I think that there's fundamentally separate scandals, because one is SDTC and their board of directors and all of the managing people who have been allowed to do this and allowed to remain in place and fix it. How are they going to fix it? I don't know. And then ArriveCan, I mean, we've just heard like he doesn't want to give over any information. That's private information, blah, 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 blah. You can't know about all of this. So it's interesting, but it's frightening because there's so many scandals like this, and it's a lot of money. Like, I don't think it's a small amount of money. Even, a couple $100 million while we send that to Ukraine at the drop of a hat, that's impactful. $54 million for something that actually should have cost less than $500,000. That's a big problem, right? Like that's taking the taxpayer for a ride. That's like getting into a taxi in Dublin and trying to get to your hotel, and it should be a £5 or €5 cab ride, and instead it costs you $55, right? Or pounds or whatever it is. And so that's somebody taking advantage. That's not the cab driver making a mistake. That's a cab driver taking advantage of you because you don't know any better, right? And that's what's happening here. We are being taken advantage of because we don't know any better, because we don't know where all the bodies are buried, proverbially. We don't know all the ins and outs of this forensic accounting that they're doing. We can't even really audit these companies because they're private companies, and the SDTC and other elements in the Canadian government, I don't think it's just the SDTC, are awarding contracts to these then bit players, these in-between players. The in-between players are inflating contracts, taking money, and they're making out rich on the taxpayer dime. And that's not good. That doesn't make me feel good. That's like finding out you should have only paid $5 for that cab ride, yo. And you're like, that's not great. You know what I mean? And so who do you complain to? But you can't complain to anybody because there's no record of anything, right? And they're not going to give you the records of it because it's a private company, right? It's very, very insidious. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.